I was 6 months pregnant when my world cracked open in the most public way possible. My 7-year-old daughter Lily was curled up beside me on the couch that quiet Sunday evening. We were watching a local charity gala being broadcast live from downtown, a fancy event my husband Mark said he had to attend for work. I didn't think much of it. He was a senior marketing director at a luxury car brand, and these events were common. I even told him to have fun. Then Lily gasped, "Mommy, is that Daddy?" I looked up, my heart stopping mid-beat. The screen zoomed in on the stage where a tall, familiar man in a tuxedo was holding a champagne glass, smiling. But he wasn't alone. Standing beside him, far too close, was a younger woman in a glittering red dress. She laughed, placed her hand gently on his chest, and then, my blood ran cold, he hugged her. Not a polite hug, a lingering full-body embrace that looked far too comfortable for a colleague. I stared, frozen. Lily tilted her head. "Why is Daddy hugging another lady like that?" I didn't have an answer. My throat tightened. My mind raced. Was I dreaming? Was it a misunderstanding? I rewound the live stream, played it again, slower this time. The woman's fingers brushed Mark's jaw as he leaned in to whisper something into her ear. She smiled and kissed his cheek. On camera. On live TV. In that moment, I felt the air leave my lungs. I was barefoot, swollen with pregnancy, my hair in a messy bun, dressed in an old t-shirt covered in paint from decorating the baby's room. I had been planning a surprise welcome-home dinner for Mark, slow-cooked roast, his favorite. Lily had drawn a card for him that read, "You're going to be the best daddy again." But he wasn't thinking about us. Not tonight. Tears welled up in my eyes as Lily's innocent voice asked again, "Mommy, is Daddy cheating on you?" I turned off the TV. I couldn't speak. I just sat there, numb, clutching my belly, feeling the soft kicks of the baby I was carrying, a baby he had begged for, a baby we planned together. Or so I thought. And in that deafening silence, a promise began to take shape inside me. I wouldn't break down. I would find out the truth, and when I did, I would make sure he regretted ever thinking I was just a housewife. The next morning, I dropped Lily off at school with a fake smile glued to my face. She was still confused, but I told her Daddy probably had to talk to that woman for work. She didn't look convinced, and honestly, neither was I. My mind hadn't stopped spinning all night. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that woman's red dress shimmering under the lights, her hand on my husband's chest. I sat in the car for nearly half an hour after dropping Lily off, just staring at the steering wheel. My phone buzzed. It was Mark. "Hey babe. Gala went longer than I expected. Crashed at the hotel with the team. Heading home now." No mention of the woman, no mention of the camera. Just a casual text like nothing had happened. My fingers hovered over the screen, tempted to confront him immediately. But I didn't. Instead, I typed back, "Glad it went well. Lily wants to show you the card she made." He replied with a heart emoji. I knew I had to be smart. If he was cheating, and I was almost sure now, blowing up over a text wouldn't solve anything. I needed evidence. I needed the full picture. By the time I got home, I had made a decision. I rewatched the entire broadcast, this time with a notebook. I wrote down the timestamp, the woman's face, the company banners in the background. I even took screenshots. Then I called my cousin Tasha, who worked in local media. She owed me a favor. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Can you get me the guest list from last night's gala?" Tasha didn't ask questions. She just said, "Give me a few hours." Meanwhile, Mark walked in around noon with flowers and that practiced smile of his. He kissed me on the cheek like nothing was wrong, like the night before hadn't happened. "I missed you," he said. "That roast smells amazing." I nodded, acting normal, smiled, laughed at his jokes, pretended to be the clueless, adoring wife. But inside I was burning. He didn't know I'd seen everything. And I wasn't going to let him know. Not yet. As we sat at the table, Lily handed him her drawing. He ruffled her hair and said, "I can't wait to meet your little brother." My stomach twisted. I looked at the man sitting across from me, the man I had shared a bed with for nearly a decade, the father of my children. And I realized I didn't recognize him anymore. He thought he could play both lives, juggle both roles, and I'd never find out. But what he didn't know was, I had just begun my own game. And I wasn't planning to lose. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 32 years old, a stay-at-home mom, and until recently I thought I had built the kind of life every woman dreamed of. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, raised by a single mother who worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table. I learned early how to be strong, how to sacrifice, and how to give more than I received. I met Mark during my final year of college. He was charming, confident, and ambitious, everything I thought I needed in a man. He made promises. He made me feel like I could finally breathe. When we got married, I gave up my teaching job and moved to the city with him. He had just landed a big position at a luxury car company, and we agreed I'd stay home with our daughter, at least until she started school. That temporary break turned into 7 years. I wasn't bitter about it, not at first. I loved being with Lily. I loved building a home. I cooked every meal from scratch, helped Lily with homework, decorated for every holiday like it was a Hallmark movie. But somewhere along the way, I stopped existing outside of my role as wife and mom. Mark's career exploded. He became the face of his company's PR campaigns, always suited, always smiling. People called him the family man on social media. They admired his perfect marriage, his adorable daughter, his glowing wife. No one saw what happened behind closed doors. No one saw the loneliness in my eyes when he came home late for the 3rd night in a row, or how he barely looked at me unless he needed something. I used to write little short stories, even started a manuscript once. But life got busy, and Mark made it clear he didn't see the point. You don't need to work, babe. Just relax. You've got the perfect life. Perfect. I swallowed my own dreams to keep his alive. So when I found out I was pregnant again, I was terrified and hopeful all at once. I thought maybe this baby would bring us closer. Maybe he'd slow down, come home earlier, remember what mattered. But that night at the gala told me everything I needed to know. He didn't want this life anymore. He didn't want me. Still, I wasn't ready to burn it all down. Not yet. Because underneath the quiet housewife exterior, there was still a woman with a voice. And she had just woken up. There's something you should know about me. I may look soft on the outside, but I don't quit. Ever. I didn't survive a childhood of hand-me-downs, unpaid bills, and broken promises just to crumble under a man's betrayal. I had been through worse. The difference was back then I was a child. Now I had my own child. 2, actually. One in my arms and one on the way. Every decision I made wasn't just about me anymore. It was about Lily. About the baby. About not letting them grow up watching their mother be disrespected, used, or pushed aside. And yet, somewhere deep down, a part of me still craved answers. I needed to know, when did Mark change? Had it always been an act? Or did I lose him while I was too busy being everything for everyone else? I started journaling again. At first, just a few sentences a day. Then full pages. I wrote down everything, the late nights, the lies, the odd phone calls. I wrote to remember who I was before him. And for the first time in years, I began to feel that old fire come back. I also started noticing things I had ignored for too long. Like how he never touched me anymore unless it was in public. How he flinched when I mentioned his coworkers. How he always left his phone face down. The signs had been there. But I didn't want to be the paranoid wife. I wanted to believe in the man I married. That's what scared me the most. Not that he changed, but that maybe he had always been this way, and I had simply loved him too much to see it. Still, I wasn't ready to scream. Not yet. The Emily Mark thought he married would have cried, begged, forgiven. But that Emily was gone. I had grown quiet over the years, yes, but not weak. I had spent a decade building this home, raising this family, holding up the image he used to climb the corporate ladder. And now I was going to use that same image to take everything back. Piece by piece. Mark worked in a world that thrived on appearances. His office was a sleek, glass-walled tower in the heart of the city, overlooking the river and surrounded by boutiques, 5-star restaurants, and valet-only buildings. Everything was polished, from the lobby's marble floors to the perfect smiles of the receptionists. He loved it there. It fed his ego, his ambition, and he loved showing it off. I only visited his office twice in all the years we were married. Once for a company holiday party when I was still nursing Lily, and once when I brought him a surprise lunch. He barely looked up from his phone. The second time, I swore I'd never come back. I didn't belong in that world. The women there wore pencil skirts and red lipstick, while I smelled like baby wipes and wore sneakers with spit-up stains. But now, that world had become the battlefield. After the gala, I started watching closely. I researched his company online, looked up press releases, tracked the events he attended. That's when I realized the woman in the red dress wasn't just a random guest. She worked at the firm. Her name was Vanessa Hale, 26, social media director, recently transferred from New York. And apparently, very close to Mark. Tasha, my cousin, came through again. She sent me an internal email leak. Nothing scandalous, but enough to know that Vanessa was climbing fast and Mark was helping her do it. That's when I knew the affair wasn't just physical. It was strategic. He was grooming her, positioning her, maybe even planning to build a life with her after I was out of the picture. The betrayal wasn't just about love. It was about status, control, power. So I decided to step into his world, not as the quiet wife, but as the woman he underestimated. First, I went back to my old wardrobe, not the yoga pants and cardigans, but the clothes from my teaching days. Blouses, slacks, heels. I let my sister do my makeup, fixed my hair, and walked into that glass tower like I belonged there. I wasn't there to cause a scene. I was there to look, to feel, to remember who I was before I became invisible. The receptionist barely recognized me. She stammered when I asked for Mark. "Oh, Mr. Carter is in a meeting." I smiled. "I'll wait." And as I sat there, legs crossed, belly visible beneath my blouse, I watched the panic ripple behind the glass walls. Something told me Mark didn't want his two worlds colliding, but that's exactly what was about to happen. It didn't take long before Mark stepped out of the conference room, clearly flustered. He had his suit jacket slung over his arm, tie loosened, and that tight smile he reserved for damage control. "Emily? What are you doing here?" he asked, keeping his voice low but tense. I stood up slowly. "Just thought I'd surprise you. Check out the empire you've built." He glanced at the receptionist, then at the other employees walking by. "Let's talk in my office." The walls in his office were glass too, though the blinds were half drawn. I walked in calmly, sat down in the leather chair, and crossed my legs, just like those corporate women I used to envy. Mark stood behind his desk, not quite sure what to say. "I saw the gala," I said softly. His face went pale. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. "I saw everything, Mark. On live TV. You didn't even try to hide it." He ran a hand through his hair. "Emily, it's not what it looked like." "Don't insult me," I cut him off. "I'm pregnant with your child. Our daughter saw you. She asked me why her daddy was hugging another woman like that." He sat down hard in his chair. "You weren't supposed to see that." I laughed, bitter. "No, I bet I wasn't." For a moment, the silence between us said more than any fight ever could. He looked tired, maybe even ashamed. But I didn't come for apologies. I came for clarity. "Is it serious?" I asked. "Are you in love with her?" He didn't answer. And that told me everything. I stood up. "I'm not going to fight you for attention, Mark. I'm not going to beg. You made your choice." His eyes darted toward the window. "Emily, just give me time to fix this." I leaned in slightly. "You don't get to fix this. You broke it. What happens next? That's up to me now." I walked out before he could respond, heels clicking on the tile, my baby kicking with every step. I felt fire in my chest, not rage, not sadness, clarity. I wasn't in his shadow anymore. I wasn't hiding in our kitchen while he played king of the city. I was standing in his world, on his turf, and for the first time he looked small. Vanessa Hale. Just hearing her name made my stomach tighten. After that visit to Mark's office, I spent weeks digging deeper. I didn't want rumors, I wanted facts. I wasn't going to be the wife who got blindsided twice. Vanessa was new to the city, but she adapted fast. She had over 20,000 followers on Instagram. Every post perfectly curated. Rooftop cocktails, designer dresses, gym selfies, inspirational quotes about knowing your worth. The kind of woman who pretended to be empowering while climbing over other women to get ahead. But what struck me most wasn't the glamour. It was how often she mentioned Mark. Photos at work dinners, mentorship meetings, late nights with the team, his name tagged over and over. They weren't hiding, not really. Just moving in plain sight, assuming no one would look closely. Especially not the pregnant wife at home. I stared at one of the photos for a long time. Vanessa in a gold dress, leaning into Mark's shoulder at a rooftop party. He was looking at her the way he used to look at me. I felt sick. Tasha helped me run a quiet background check. Nothing criminal. No scandals. But something didn't add up. Vanessa had jumped companies 3 times in 5 years, each time leaving just as rumors of inappropriate relationships started to swirl. HR complaints, gossip, office tension. She knew how to use charm as a weapon. And Mark? He was exactly the type to fall for it. But I wasn't angry just because she was young or beautiful. I was angry because she knew about me. In one of her Instagram stories, she had filmed Mark's office. Lily's photo, a framed shot from her 5th birthday, was clearly visible on his desk. She knew he had a daughter. She knew he had a family, and she didn't care. Worse, she seemed to enjoy it. One post read, "If he wanted to be faithful, he would be. Don't blame the woman who made him smile again." It wasn't just an affair, it was a takeover. She was trying to replace me, not just in Mark's life but in his narrative. She was positioning herself as the one who understood him, who supported his dreams. But here's the thing. She didn't build any of it. I did. And now she was trying to steal what I built with lies, lipstick, and a fake smile. But she didn't know I wasn't going down without a fight. I kept watching Vanessa from a distance, studying her like a chess player sizing up her opponent. She wasn't just some fling Mark would get tired of. No, she had a plan, and she was patient. Vanessa started showing up in the family's social circle. I noticed her name popping up in charity events, on guest lists of galas I used to attend before the pregnancy. She was working her way in. Even the wives of Mark's colleagues began to mention her. "Oh, Vanessa is so sharp," one said at a baby shower. "Mark's lucky to have her on the team." Lucky. I smiled and nodded while gripping my teacup tight enough to crack it. Then came the day that broke whatever was left of my silence. Lily came home from school, holding a flyer. "Mommy, we're doing career week. Can Daddy come talk about his job?" My heart clenched. I told her we'd ask him. That night, while Lily was asleep, I brought it up at dinner. Mark barely looked up from his phone. "Career week? At her school?" "Yes," I said calmly. "She wants you there." He hesitated. "We have a product launch that week. I'll check." The next day, I saw Vanessa's Instagram story. She was rehearsing a presentation with a caption, "Helping my favorite exec shine for a big moment." The launch. He wasn't going to be at Career Week. He was going to be with her. That was when the final switch flipped inside me. This wasn't just betrayal. This was erasure. She was helping him build a life that excluded me and even our daughter. She was replacing me not just emotionally, but publicly. Slowly, methodically, with a smile on her face. And Mark? He let it happen. He opened the door for her. He didn't just betray me. He invited her into the life I sacrificed everything for. But they both made the same mistake. They thought I'd disappear quietly. I wasn't going to scream or beg or cry in public. No, I was going to take back the narrative. Because while Vanessa may have known how to play the game in the office, I knew Mark in ways she never could. His weaknesses, his blind spots, the truths he buried. And if she thought stealing my husband was her biggest win, she hadn't seen what I was capable of when I was done playing nice. It happened 3 weeks later. The moment that shattered whatever image of keeping it together I still had left. Mark's company hosted an annual spring gala, a high-profile media-covered event held at a luxury hotel downtown. The same kind of event where I used to be the smiling wife on his arm. This year, I hadn't been invited, at least not officially. But Tasha pulled strings. She got me in as her +1, media access included. I wore a sleek black maternity gown, simple, elegant, and unmistakably commanding. My hair was done, makeup flawless. I looked like I belonged there. No one questioned me as I walked through the marble entrance, my press badge swinging from my clutch. Inside, the ballroom sparkled with chandeliers and designer gowns. Champagne flowed, cameras flashed, and in the center of it all, Mark. He was on stage, holding a microphone, talking about integrity and leadership and family values. I almost laughed. Then I saw her. Vanessa. She stood just a few feet off stage, in a silver gown, smiling up at him like a queen watching her king speak. Her hand rested lightly on her belly. I froze. No, it couldn't be. I pushed forward, closer, pretending to blend in with the media team. I took pictures with my phone, zooming in. Yes. Her hand was on her stomach, and she was glowing. After the speech, Mark stepped off stage. Vanessa met him halfway, whispering something in his ear. He laughed, then, without hesitation, kissed her. Cameras caught it. Guests turned, and I felt every eye in the room shift because some of them recognized me. Emily Carter, his wife. Someone gasped. I stood tall, breathing slow, heart pounding. A man near me whispered, "Isn't that his pregnant wife?" Then Vanessa saw me. Her smile faltered for a split second before she adjusted it again, eyes scanning me from head to toe. She wasn't expecting this. Neither was Mark. His smile dropped the moment our eyes met. He froze. The room went quiet around us. Whispers turned to full-blown murmurs. I didn't need to say anything. I didn't need to scream or cry or cause a scene, because the truth was already out, and now the world had seen it for themselves. Mark stepped toward me, his face pale, his movements stiff like a man walking into his own funeral. "Emily, what are you doing here?" he asked under his breath, eyes darting at the watching crowd. I smiled, calm and collected. "Just thought I'd come support the man who values integrity. You said that so beautifully up there." Vanessa stood still, clutching her clutch tighter. Her confidence cracked, but only slightly. She wasn't used to being the second woman in a conversation. She had no idea how to handle the wife showing up, especially not the pregnant one. "I didn't want it to come out like this," Mark said, trying to lower his voice, to control the chaos brewing around us. "But you did want it to come out, didn't you?" I asked, turning just slightly so the photographers behind us could catch my profile and my bump. A woman in a red dress nearby whispered, "She's pregnant, and he's with the other one?" I turned to Vanessa. "Congratulations, by the way. I assume that glow isn't just from highlighter." She blinked, caught off guard. "Excuse me?" "Don't play dumb, Vanessa. That hand on your belly? You think I wouldn't notice? You're not just stealing a husband. You're trying to build a family with him, too." She straightened. "Maybe if you had been more present in his life." I cut her off. "Don't finish that sentence." Mark stepped between us, but it was too late. The moment was already viral. Phones were out. Flashes had gone off. People had seen enough to start piecing the puzzle together. The betrayed wife, the mistress, the baby, the public humiliation. A security guard approached, asking if I needed to be escorted out. I looked him straight in the eye and said, "No, I'm not the one who doesn't belong here." Then I left on my own terms, not crying, not screaming, just quiet, head high, heart shattered, but unbowed. The next morning, the story had already spread. CEO's wife shows up pregnant at gala, catches husband kissing another woman. Headlines flooded local gossip blogs. Even national ones picked it up. Photos of me standing across from Mark and Vanessa went viral. I was dubbed the silent wife, a symbol of quiet strength. My inbox exploded with messages of support from strangers. But I didn't care about the attention. I cared that now, the whole world saw what I'd been living through. And if Mark and Vanessa thought the worst was over, they didn't realize this was only the beginning. After the gala, everything unraveled. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake on the couch, the baby kicking gently inside me, while the news replayed the moment over and over. Some clips blurred my face, others didn't. My name trended locally on Twitter for 2 days. I didn't care about the fame. I just wanted to disappear. Mark didn't come home that night. He sent a message saying, "We need time to think. It's best for everyone if I stay away right now." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I turned it off. Lily noticed. "Where's Daddy?" She asked the next morning, her little voice more fragile than I'd ever heard it. "He's staying somewhere else for a little while," I told her, forcing calm. "Because of that other lady?" I paused. "It's complicated, sweetie." She looked down at her cereal and didn't say another word. I knew I'd just given her a memory she'd carry forever. The days blurred. I stopped answering texts. Even Tasha gave me space. I moved like a ghost through the house, washing dishes, folding laundry, preparing Lily for school, but inside, I was hollow. Every time I passed a mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back. Puffy eyes, dry lips, hair unwashed. I had poured so much of myself into holding our family together, and now I was left with pieces. I tried to be strong, but strength without rest breaks you. One morning I collapsed in the bathroom. I had been brushing my teeth when the world started spinning. My knees gave out. I hit the floor, hands clutching my belly. Lily found me there. "Mommy," she ran to get my phone, called my sister, called 911. At the hospital, the doctor said it was exhaustion, stress, dehydration. The baby was okay, for now, but I wasn't. Lying in that hospital bed, hooked up to IVs, with Lily sleeping in a chair beside me, I broke. Silent tears ran down my face, not just for the betrayal, not just for the humiliation, but for the version of me that had tried so hard to make it all work. She was gone now, and all that was left was the silence of starting over, alone. When I was discharged, my sister Rachel brought me home. She had packed a small bag for me, clean clothes, vitamins, snacks. The fridge was stocked. Lily's homework was done. "You don't have to do this alone," she said gently, helping me into bed. But I didn't feel like I deserved help. I felt like I'd failed. Failed as a wife, failed as a mother. Failed as a woman who believed that love and loyalty could hold a man. That week, I barely got out of bed. I ate what I had to, drank what I could, but everything tasted like guilt and grief. Mark didn't call, not once. Vanessa, on the other hand, posted a photo on her story, a shot of 2 wine glasses on a balcony, captioned, "When peace feels earned." Peace? I had given him peace for years. Silence, forgiveness, patience. I had covered for his late nights, his broken promises. I held our daughter's hand through every missed bedtime story, every forgotten recital. And now, she was reaping the reward? I stared at the ceiling for hours, day after day. The walls started closing in. Every corner of the house reminded me of him. The photo frames, the smell of his cologne on a coat in the closet, the half-used shaving cream in the bathroom. One night, Lily crawled into my bed. She didn't say anything. She just wrapped her small arms around my belly and laid her head there. I cried quietly, not wanting to wake her. I cried for the unborn baby, for Lily, for the life I had imagined, for the years I had spent loving a man who couldn't even respect me enough to lie better, and for the me I had slowly erased, the woman with a voice, with dreams, with strength. I had nothing left to give, nothing but heartbreak. But sometimes that's exactly where something new begins, not in the fight, but in the quiet that comes after the storm. Because in that darkness something stirred. Not hope, not yet, but the tiniest flicker of will. A whisper that said, "This isn't how your story ends." A week after I got home from the hospital, Rachel came over with an envelope in her hand and a look on her face I hadn't seen before. "What's that?" I asked, barely lifting my head from the couch. She sat beside me and said quietly, "It's time you know something." Inside the envelope was a thick file. At first glance, it looked like boring financial documents, but the more I flipped, the more my hands began to tremble. It was a breakdown of the company's ownership structure, names, shares, silent investors, hidden deals. And there, listed under a small LLC I barely recognized, was my name. "Wait, what is this?" I asked, sitting up straighter. Rachel looked at me with a strange smile. "Do you remember 5 years ago, when Grandma passed and left us both part of her estate? Of course, I used my part to help pay for Lily's school and the mortgage. You did, but Mark didn't want you to use it all on the house. He convinced you to invest, the rest in a safe portfolio, remember?" I nodded slowly. "He said it was just a savings plan for the future." Rachel's smile widened. "It wasn't just savings. He used your name to co-invest in his company, under that LLC. And guess what? That company now owns 12% of the firm." I blinked. "You're saying I own part of Mark's company?" "You're not just the wife, Emily. You're a stakeholder, a silent partner, legally, financially. He used your inheritance, your signature, and never told you what he was really doing." My head spun. All these years I thought I was powerless, invisible, but I had been part of the foundation all along, and Mark had kept me in the dark. Rachel leaned in. "This isn't just leverage. This is a weapon. You've got legal rights, Emily. Voice, vote, access to company records. You're not just someone he cheated on, you're someone he's accountable to." For the first time in weeks, I felt something shift in my chest. Power. Control. I had thought I was just a pregnant woman left behind. But I wasn't. I was a part owner of the very empire he tried to build with another woman. And he had no idea I knew. That night, I stayed up late at the dining table, surrounded by papers, my laptop, and a notepad filled with scribbles. My heart was racing, not from fear anymore, but from clarity. All those nights Mark came home late, claiming he was building something for our future. He was using my money, my name, my trust. I dug deeper, checking public records, cross-referencing contracts Rachel helped me obtain through a lawyer friend. And the more I looked, the clearer it became. I wasn't just some silent partner. I had voting rights. I had access to financials. I had a legal voice in executive decisions. Mark had been so confident I'd never ask questions, so sure I'd never look beyond school pickups and dinner recipes. He didn't just cheat on me emotionally, he manipulated me financially. He built his career on the illusion of a supportive wife while quietly cashing in on her silence. But the silence was over. I called Rachel the next day. Help me draft a formal request for access to the next board meeting. She didn't ask questions. She just said, "Already ahead of you." Meanwhile, I started documenting everything: the affair, the gala footage, screenshots of Vanessa's posts, even Mark's recent transactions. I spoke to a lawyer. Quietly, thoroughly. I didn't want revenge for the pain. I wanted accountability for the years I gave up, the sacrifices, the loyalty, the love. For Lily, for the baby, and for the woman I used to be, who was finally waking up with fire in her eyes. I also reached out to someone I hadn't spoken to in years, my former mentor from when I studied education. She now ran a foundation supporting women's rights in business. She listened to my story without judgment, and then she said, "Come in. We have work for women like you." Suddenly I had allies. Not just family, not just lawyers, but professionals who saw me not as a victim, but as someone who had power, value, voice. Mark may have pushed me out of his spotlight, but he had accidentally set me up for something far bigger than his stage. Because while he thought I was just picking up the pieces, I was quietly building the next chapter. One where I didn't just survive, I owned the room. The woman staring back at me in the mirror wasn't the same one from a month ago. My skin had color again. My eyes, once swollen from crying, were sharp, focused. I wore a navy blue blazer that fit just right over my baby bump, paired with tailored black pants and nude heels. My hair was pinned neatly, makeup soft but defined. I didn't look like a housewife clinging to a broken marriage. I looked like someone you didn't want to underestimate. The board meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. Mark had no idea I'd be attending. Rachel drove me downtown and dropped me off in front of the building. "You ready?" she asked. I smiled calmly. More than ever. I walked through those glass doors like I owned the place, because legally, part of me did. Security scanned my badge, which had been reissued under my full legal name, Emily Carter Hale, stakeholder. The receptionist gave me a polite but puzzled look as I stepped into the elevator. On the 28th floor, the boardroom was already buzzing. Men in suits, women in heels, laptops open, coffee steaming. Vanessa sat at the far end, dressed in a tight beige dress, scrolling on her phone. She didn't notice me at first, but Mark did. His jaw dropped the second I walked in. I gave him a nod and took a seat, not beside him, but across, directly across. The room quieted. "I'm here as a stakeholder," I said, setting my binder on the table. "I believe I'm entitled to attend." No one objected. Legally, they couldn't. Mark fumbled. "Emily, this isn't—" "It is," I said calmly, "and I'd like to hear the financials. Please continue." Vanessa looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. As the meeting went on, I asked questions, smart ones Mark didn't expect me to understand. I referenced numbers from last year's reports, brought up marketing concerns, challenged projections Vanessa had presented. The room slowly shifted. Eyes turned toward me with respect, even curiosity. By the end of the meeting, I wasn't the wife anymore. I was the woman who had been watching, learning, evolving, and I wasn't done yet. Because while Mark tried to build his empire with another woman, I had quietly stepped into my own, and I was just getting started. After the meeting, I didn't leave right away. I stayed behind, reviewing documents, exchanging polite nods with board members, people who had only ever seen me as Mark's wife. Now, they saw me as something else entirely. When I finally stepped into the hallway, Vanessa was waiting. She tried to smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You made quite the entrance," she said coolly. I looked her up and down. She was clearly uncomfortable, clutching her designer bag a little too tightly. "I'm not here to impress anyone," I replied. "Just doing what I should have done a long time ago." She tilted her head. "You know, Mark's not the villain you're painting him to be." I raised an eyebrow. "And you're not the savior you think you are." She flinched, just slightly. "You think showing up in a boardroom changes anything?" she challenged. I stepped closer. "It changes everything. Because you both underestimated me. You both thought I'd stay silent. You thought I'd vanish. And now, here I am, not screaming, not begging, just walking into the power that was mine all along." She said nothing, just stood there, trying to hold her composure. I left her there, heels clicking on marble floors, head held high. Over the next few weeks, things changed fast. I started consulting with the company's legal team about my rights. I reviewed Mark's use of shared assets, reactivated my own accounts, even got a financial advisor. I also revived something else I thought I'd buried: my voice. I launched a small blog, quietly at first, sharing anonymous stories about betrayal, motherhood, self-worth. Women started responding. Some cried, some thanked me, some asked for advice. I didn't write as the wife of a CEO. I wrote as a woman who had fallen and found her own footing. And I wasn't alone. One morning I got a call from the foundation director, the one I met weeks ago. "We want you to speak at our upcoming Women's Summit," she said. "Your story matters." I hesitated for a moment. Then I said yes, because it was time. Not just to take up space in boardrooms, but on stages, in rooms where my voice could reach others who were still trapped in silence. I wasn't just rising from betrayal, I was rewriting the entire narrative. And this time, I wasn't doing it for him, or even to spite her. I was doing it for me. The Women's Summit was held at a luxury hotel ballroom, the very same one where I had first seen Mark kiss Vanessa in front of hundreds. Ironic, really. That place had once been the scene of my public humiliation. Now it would become the stage for my reckoning. The theme of the summit: reclaiming power. I was the keynote speaker. As I stepped onto the stage, a soft spotlight lit up the room. I wore a dark emerald dress that hugged my belly gracefully, my posture tall, steady, proud. The applause was warm, not wild, not pitying, but respectful. I took a deep breath and began. "I want to tell you a story," I said, "about a woman who gave up everything for her family, who traded dreams for diapers, job offers for preschool drop-offs, who thought loyalty would protect her." The room was silent, every ear locked in. She was betrayed, on live television, while pregnant, while raising a daughter who still asked, "Why doesn't Daddy come home anymore?" Some women gasped, others bowed their heads. They knew this story too well, but she didn't burn it all down. She didn't scream, she listened, she watched, and then she learned. I told them about the hidden ownership, the inheritance, the boardroom. I didn't name names, but I didn't have to. She was never weak, just quiet, and when she found her voice again, the world listened. The room rose in applause before I could even finish. After the speech, dozens came up to me, some in tears, others hugging me, telling me I had spoken their story aloud for the first time. But the real moment came backstage. Mark was there. He had been invited as a guest, as a representative of his company, which was a corporate sponsor of the event. He hadn't known I was speaking. Now he stood frozen in the hallway, holding a champagne glass, watching as people embraced me, cheered for me. He looked small. "Emily," he said, walking up, his voice hesitant. "That speech wasn't about you," I replied. "Not anymore." He nodded slowly. "You were incredible. Honestly, I didn't expect. You never expected me to stand on my own," I said, my voice calm. "But I did, and I'm just getting started." Then I turned and walked away. Not in anger, not in spite, but in power. Because the best revenge isn't destroying someone. It's showing them how beautifully you rise without them. In the days following the summit, the ripple effect was undeniable. My speech went viral. Someone had recorded it and posted it on social media with the caption, "When the wife becomes the storm." Overnight, I became a symbol. Not of scandal, but of strength. Local news reached out for interviews, podcasts invited me to speak, a publishing company emailed asking if I'd consider turning my story into a memoir. But none of that compared to what happened at the next board meeting. This time, I wasn't just a face in the room. I walked in with a legal advisor at my side. There had been discussions about Vanessa's new proposed role, a leadership position with significant influence over brand direction. She and Mark had been lobbying quietly for weeks, expecting an easy approval. But I had other plans. I waited until the proposal was on the table, then calmly stood up and presented a formal objection. "As a stakeholder," I began, "I find this nomination inappropriate, given recent events and current public scrutiny. There are concerns regarding professionalism, potential conflicts of interest, and reputational risk." Vanessa went pale. Mark shifted uncomfortably in his seat. I wasn't screaming. I wasn't emotional. I was factual, composed, and every word landed like a carefully aimed arrow. The board listened. They voted. The motion was denied. Vanessa didn't speak to me on the way out. Mark didn't either. But their silence was louder than any insult they could have thrown. A week later, Vanessa quietly resigned. Her Instagram went private. And Mark, well, he sent me an email. No subject line, just 4 words, "You won, I'm sorry." But it wasn't about winning. Not really. It was about reclaiming something no one else could give me, my dignity, my voice, my life. I spent the next few months focusing on Lily, preparing for the baby and continuing my work with the foundation. The more I shared my story, the more women came forward with theirs. The community grew, stronger, louder. And as for Mark, he stayed in the background. We communicated only when necessary, through lawyers or about Lily. There were no more apologies. No more lies, just silence. Because in the end, I didn't need revenge to ruin him. I just needed to rise so far above that he could never touch me again. 6 months later, I gave birth to a healthy baby boy. His name is Noah. A name I chose myself without asking for anyone's opinion or permission. He was born in a quiet hospital room surrounded by my sister Rachel, a midwife who held my hand, and Lily, who was finally old enough to understand what strength looked like. Mark wasn't there. He asked days before if he could be, and I said no. Not out of spite, but because some moments are sacred, and some people no longer deserve to be part of them. The moment I held Noah, I didn't cry. I breathed, a deep, full breath, like I had finally exhaled the weight of years I didn't even know I was carrying. Motherhood this time felt different. Not rushed, not confused, but intentional, empowered. I wasn't just nurturing a child, I was modeling resilience for my daughter. I was choosing joy, even after pain. That spring, I officially launched my organization, Second Voice. It was a support network for women rebuilding after betrayal. Not just romantic, but financial, familial, emotional. We offered legal resources, emotional counseling, workshops on financial literacy, and space for women to tell their stories. The first event sold out in 3 days. And when I stood on that stage again, I wasn't nervous. I wasn't grieving. I was home. I looked out at hundreds of women, some young, some older, all different, and said, "We don't break because we've been broken. We rise because we learned how to rebuild." That line got a standing ovation. Afterward, one woman came up to me with tears in her eyes and whispered, "You gave me permission to stop apologizing for surviving." It hit me like lightning, because that's what so many of us do. We apologize for leaving, for speaking up, for not being silent. We apologize for healing, but not anymore, because women don't owe the world silence to be respected, and we don't need to be perfect to be powerful. Months passed, and life started to feel whole again. Not like it used to be, but better. Stronger, quieter in all the right ways. Lily adjusted. She still asked questions about her dad sometimes, but I always answered honestly, gently. I told her families come in all shapes and stories, and what mattered most was love, honesty, and safety. Things we had in our home now, without compromise. Mark and I finalized the divorce privately. No court drama. Just signatures, lawyers, and a quiet acknowledgement that we were 2 very different people now. He offered a settlement. I declined. Because I didn't need his money. I had my own. I had reclaimed everything I'd once given up. My identity, my name, my dignity. And with that came something far more valuable than any paycheck: freedom. One afternoon, I sat on the porch, rocking Noah in my arms while Lily drew chalk hearts on the pavement. The sun was warm. The air smelled like spring. I realized I hadn't thought about Vanessa in weeks. Not because I had forgiven her, but because she no longer held space in my story. She wasn't the ending, she was just the plot twist. And Mark, he faded too. A name in Lily's life, a monthly co-parenting update, nothing more. The pain, the betrayal, the chaos, they were chapters, not the whole book. And now, I was the author again. To the women who hear this and think, I could never do what she did, let me tell you something. Neither could I. Not at first. I cried. I broke. I lost myself. I doubted every breath. But then I remembered who I was before the world told me who I should be. I remembered that I was more than someone's wife. More than someone's mother. I was me. And when I stood back up, it wasn't revenge I carried. It was the quiet, unstoppable fire of a woman who finally chose herself.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.